My wife framed me to hide her affair. Her family backed her lies, then returned for my fortune. But I gave them an answer they never saw coming. There are moments in life when you realize you've been living in a play where you didn't know if you were the actor or the audience, until the curtain falls and you're standing alone on an empty stage. My name is Nathaniel Brooks, I'm 47 years old, and I'm the CEO of one of the most successful AI companies in Silicon Valley. But 20 years ago, I was just another software engineer with a 5-year marriage to Rebecca, and what I thought was an unbreakable bond with my family. I used to believe in the sanctity of blood relations. Growing up in a tight-knit family in Ohio, Sunday dinners were sacred, birthday calls were mandatory, and family loyalty was the cornerstone of our existence. My sister Evelyn, 3 years older and an elementary school teacher with an unwavering moral compass, was my closest confidant. My parents, retired and comfortable, took pride in their 2 successful children. Extended family gatherings were warm affairs filled with laughter, shared memories, and unconditional support. I was the golden boy, the devoted son, the loving husband, the reliable brother who never missed a family obligation. Rebecca and I had what everyone called a picture-perfect marriage. We met in college, dated for 3 years, and settled into a comfortable routine of shared Netflix evenings, weekend farmers market visits, and annual vacation photos that made our friends envious. She worked as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized consulting firm, and I was climbing the ranks as a software developer at a tech startup. Our conversations flowed easily, our fights were rare and quickly resolved, and our future seemed mapped out in suburban bliss. But perfection, I learned, is often just an elaborate mask. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday evening in March. I came home from work to find Rebecca sitting at our kitchen island, staring at her laptop screen with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but something colder, detached. When I kissed her cheek as I always did, she flinched slightly, as if my touch had startled her from deep thought. "How was your day?" I asked, loosening my tie and opening the refrigerator. "Fine," she replied without looking up. Her voice carried a flatness that made me pause with a yogurt container halfway to my mouth. "Just fine?" I tried to inject some lightness into my tone. "Come on, you usually have at least 3 stories about your coworkers by now." She closed the laptop with a soft click. "I'm tired, Nathan. I think I'll go to bed early tonight." It was 7:30 in the evening. Rebecca was a night owl who rarely slept before 11, but when I started to ask if she was feeling okay, she was already walking toward our bedroom, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. That was the beginning of what I now recognize as the slow dissolution of everything I thought I knew about my life. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca became a ghost in our own home. She left for work earlier, came home later, and spent her evenings either locked in her home office or claiming exhaustion. Our conversations became transactional. Who would pick up groceries, whose turn it was to pay the electric bill, whether we needed to please reply to her cousin's wedding. But it wasn't just Rebecca. My family's regular check-ins began to feel different too. Evelyn's weekly phone calls became shorter, peppered with awkward silences and quick topic changes whenever I mentioned Rebecca. When I called my parents to plan our usual monthly dinner, my mother's enthusiasm seemed forced, and my father, never one for lengthy conversations anyway, cut our call short with vague mentions of yard work that needed immediate attention. I found myself analyzing every interaction, replaying conversations for hidden meanings, wondering if I was losing my mind or if the people closest to me were slowly, systematically pulling away. The worst part was the uncertainty, the growing conviction that everyone knew something I didn't, that I was the only one not in on some terrible secret about my own life. The axe fell on a Friday afternoon in April. I was debugging code in my cubicle when my phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Can you come home early today? We need to talk." Those 5 words sent ice through my veins. In my experience, "we need to talk" was never followed by good news. I told my supervisor I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely untrue, and drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Rebecca was waiting in the living room, sitting on the edge of our beige sofa with a manila envelope in her lap, and an expression of grim determination on her face. She looked like someone about to perform an unpleasant but necessary task, like firing an employee or putting down a sick pet. "What's going on?" I asked, though part of me already knew. She slid the envelope across our coffee table without ceremony. "I've filed for divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the envelope as if it might transform into something less devastating if I looked hard enough. Rebecca, what? Why? What's wrong? We can work through whatever this is. No, Nathan, we can't. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. You know what you've done. I honestly don't. My voice cracked with desperation. Please, just tell me what I've done wrong. Whatever it is, I'll fix it. We can go to counseling, we can… Don't. She stood up abruptly. Don't pretend you don't know. Don't insult my intelligence or yours. I've already talked to my lawyer, and I've spoken with your family. Everyone agrees this is the right thing to do. My family? The confusion was overwhelming now, mixing with panic to create a nauseating cocktail in my stomach. What does my family have to do with this? Rebecca, I'm completely lost here. She gathered her purse and a small suitcase I hadn't noticed by the door. I'm staying with Jennifer for now. My lawyer will be in touch about the details. Wait! I stood up so quickly the coffee table knocked against my shins. You can't just leave without explaining anything. What did you tell my family? What do they think I've done? For the first time, her composed facade cracked slightly. A flicker of something, guilt, regret, passed across her face before the mask returned. Figure it out, Nathan. You're a smart man. I'm sure you can connect the dots. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the sudden silence of our home. I stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by 5 years of shared memories, wedding photos, vacation souvenirs, books we'd read together, and felt like a stranger in my own life. My first instinct was to call Evelyn. If anyone would give me straight answers and emotional support, it would be my sister. She answered on the second ring, but her usually warm greeting was replaced by a cautious hello, Nathan. Evelyn, thank God. Rebecca just left. She filed for divorce and she's saying things that don't make any sense. She mentioned talking to the family. What's going on? The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Then Evelyn sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. Nathan, I think you need to take a long, hard look at your behavior and consider how your actions have affected Rebecca. What actions? I was practically shouting now. Nobody will tell me what I supposedly did. The fact that you're still denying it just proves Rebecca made the right decision. Evelyn's voice had taken on the tone she used with misbehaving students. We can't support behavior like this, Nathan. We won't. Behavior like what? But she had already hung up. I called my parents next, then my Uncle Jim, then my cousin Sarah. The responses were variations of the same theme: disappointment, moral superiority, and a complete refusal to explain what crime I had allegedly committed. By the end of the evening, it was clear that whatever Rebecca had told them had been devastating enough to turn my entire family against me without trial or explanation. The next few weeks were a blur of legal papers, financial negotiations, and crushing isolation. Rebecca's lawyer was efficient and merciless, demanding half of everything we'd built together while offering no insight into the mysterious accusations that had started this avalanche. My own lawyer, a kind but pragmatic woman named Patricia Chen, advised me to focus on the financial aspects, rather than trying to uncover Rebecca's motivations. Sometimes, she said gently during one of our meetings, it's better to cut your losses and move forward rather than getting trapped in the why of it all. But I couldn't let it go. The injustice of being condemned without knowing my crime consumed me. I hired a private investigator, thinking perhaps Rebecca was having an affair and needed to create justification for leaving. I examined my own behavior obsessively, wondering if I had been emotionally distant, neglectful, or unconsciously cruel. I replayed every conversation, every argument, every moment of our relationship, searching for the terrible thing I must have done to deserve this treatment. The breakthrough came 3 months after Rebecca left. Through the most mundane of circumstances, I was cleaning out our shared computer, transferring files to my laptop, when I discovered a folder titled Personal, R, that I'd never noticed before. Inside were months of email exchanges between Rebecca and someone named Marcus Holloway. The subject lines alone told a story. Last night was incredible, can't stop thinking about you, when can we be together for real? My hands shook as I opened the first email, dated 18 months earlier. The content was explicit, passionate, and left no doubt that Rebecca had been having an affair with her supervisor at work for the better part of 2 years. But what made my blood run cold wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the later emails discussing their exit strategy. In an email dated 2 weeks before Rebecca asked for the divorce, Marcus had written, "You need to get ahead of this before Nathan finds out and makes us look like the bad guys. Create a narrative where he's the problem. Your family loves you like a daughter. They'll believe whatever you tell them about his behavior. Make it something serious enough that they'll cut contact completely. That way, even if he tries to tell them about us later, they won't listen." Rebecca's response was clinical in its calculation. "I've been laying the groundwork for weeks. I told Evelyn that Nathan has been emotionally abusive and that I suspect he's been unfaithful. I cried a lot, really sold the wounded wife angle. She's already started pulling back from him. By the time I'm ready to file, they'll be completely on my side." I read the entire exchange 3 times, my initial shock giving way to a rage so pure it felt like fire in my veins. She hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She had systematically destroyed my relationship with my family based on complete fabrications. She had turned the people who loved me most into unwitting accomplices in my exile. But what shattered me even more than the betrayal was the realization that my family had been so ready to believe the worst about me 27 years of being a devoted son and brother, and they had cut me off based on one person's word without even asking for my side of the story. I printed every email, organized them chronologically, and called Patricia Chen. "I found the smoking gun," I told her. Not only was she cheating, but she deliberately poisoned my family against me to cover her tracks. Patricia reviewed the evidence with professional thoroughness. "This is certainly grounds for a more favorable settlement," she said, "and you could potentially use this information to clear your name with your family." But as I sat in her office, staring at the evidence of my wife's calculated cruelty, I made a decision that would define the next 20 years of my life. "No," I said quietly, "I don't want to use this." Patricia looked confused. "Nathan, this proves your innocence. This could restore your relationship with your family. If they were willing to believe I was capable of emotional abuse and infidelity without any evidence, without even asking me about it, then they never really knew me at all." I gathered the papers and slid them back into the folder. Let them believe whatever they want. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who were so ready to think the worst of me. That decision, born from hurt and pride in equal measure, set the course for everything that followed. I took the divorce settlement without contest, sold our house, and moved 3 states away to Denver. I cut all contact with my family, changed my phone number, and deleted every social media account that connected me to my old life. If they wanted to believe Rebecca's lies, they were welcome to live with that choice. The first few years were the hardest. Loneliness was a constant companion, made worse by the fact that I had chosen it. I threw myself into work with the desperate energy of someone trying to outrun their own thoughts. I took risks, worked 18-hour days, and said yes to every challenging project that came my way. I had nothing left to lose, which made me fearless in ways I'd never been before. The tech industry in the early 2000s was ripe for disruption, and my combination of technical skills and reckless ambition proved to be exactly what several startups needed. I moved from company to company, each transition bringing better titles, higher salaries, and more stock options. I wasn't trying to get rich. I was trying to build something so demanding that it would leave no room for thoughts of the family that had discarded me, or the wife who had orchestrated my exile. But success, it turned out, was inevitable when you had nothing else to focus on. By 2010, I was a senior vice president at an artificial intelligence startup that was beginning to attract serious investor attention. By 2015, when the company went public, my stock options made me worth more money than I had ever imagined possible. By 2020, I had been recruited to run my own company, developing AI solutions for healthcare and education. The irony wasn't lost on me that the very family who had rejected me for being allegedly untrustworthy was missing out on watching me become one of the most respected figures in my industry. But the irony felt hollow. Success without people to share it with was just expensive loneliness. I wasn't completely alone, of course. I had colleagues, business relationships, and eventually, romantic connections. I dated sporadically, never letting anyone get too close, never sharing the full story of why I had no contact with my family. Most relationships ended when it became clear that I was emotionally unavailable in ways that professional success couldn't compensate for. Everything changed when I met Sarah Winters at a medical technology conference in 2019. She was a trauma psychologist presenting research on AI applications in mental health treatment, and her presentation was the most compelling thing I'd heard in years. During the networking reception, I found myself genuinely interested in someone else's work for the first time in decades. Our conversation started professionally but quickly became personal. Sarah had an uncanny ability to ask questions that cut through surface pleasantries and reach the heart of things. When she asked why I seemed to carry myself like someone who had learned not to expect anything from anyone, I found myself telling her the entire story. Rebecca, the divorce, my family's betrayal, and the 20 years of self-imposed exile that followed. You punished yourself as much as you punished them, she said thoughtfully. Maybe more. I protected myself, I corrected. Same thing in this case. Sarah didn't try to fix me or convince me to reconcile with my family. Instead, she helped me understand that healing didn't require forgiveness or reconciliation. It required letting go of the need for vindication. She helped me see that I had been carrying my hurt like a badge of honor, proof of how deeply I had been wronged, when what I really needed was to set it down and walk away from it entirely. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony attended by her family and a handful of close friends. When our daughter Emma was born the following year, I experienced a love so fierce and protective that it put all my previous relationships into perspective. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Unconditional, instinctive, unwavering. I thought I had made peace with my past until the night of the National Technology Innovation Awards in March 2024. My company had been nominated for our breakthrough work in educational AI, and the ceremony was a black tie affair covered by major tech publications and business networks. I was sitting at our table, half listening to the presenter announcing the winner of our category, when I heard my name called. The walk to the stage felt surreal. I had given hundreds of presentations and speeches over the years, but this felt different, more significant somehow. As I accepted the award and began my prepared remarks about innovation and social responsibility, I caught sight of familiar faces in the audience that made my words stick in my throat. There, at a table near the back of the ballroom, sat Evelyn, my parents, and my Uncle Jim. They were dressed formally, wearing expressions of pride and approval, looking for all the world like family members who had come to support their successful relative. I stumbled through the rest of my acceptance speech, my mind reeling with questions. How had they found out about the ceremony? Why were they here? What gave them the right to show up after 20 years of silence and act like proud family members? The answer came during the networking reception following the ceremony. I was talking with a journalist from Forbes when Evelyn approached our conversation with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Excuse me," she said to the journalist with a warm smile. "I'm Nathan's sister, Evelyn Brooks. I just wanted to say how proud our family is of his incredible achievements." The journalist's eyes lit up with interest. "Oh, wonderful. It's always great to meet family members. You must be so proud of Nathan's journey from a small startup to running one of the most innovative companies in the country." "We are," Evelyn said, placing her hand on my arm in a gesture that felt like a brand. "Nathan has always been brilliant, ever since we were children. Our family has always encouraged his innovative thinking and supported his entrepreneurial spirit. In many ways, his success tonight is a family success." I stared at my sister in complete disbelief. The woman who had hung up on me 20 years ago, who had refused to hear my side of the story, who had supported my exile based on lies, was now claiming credit for my success in front of a national business reporter. "That's interesting," the journalist said, scribbling notes. "Nathan, you've never mentioned your family's influence in previous interviews." Before I could respond, my father appeared beside Evelyn, extending his hand to the journalist with a politician's smile. "We're a humble family," he said. "We've always believed in letting Nathan's work speak for itself, rather than seeking attention for our role in his development. But tonight is so special, we couldn't help but come show our support." "Their role?" I finally found my voice, though it came out tighter than I intended. "I'm sorry, could you excuse us for a moment?" I guided Evelyn and my father away from the journalist, my hand firm on Evelyn's elbow. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" "We're celebrating your success," Evelyn said, her voice taking on the familiar tone of someone who believed their intentions justified any behavior. "We saw the coverage of your nomination and couldn't be prouder. We've been following your career for years, Nathan. We always knew you'd achieve something like this." "Following my career?" The rage I thought I had processed over the years came rushing back with startling intensity. "You've been following my career? For 20 years you've known where I was and what I was doing, and you never once reached out?" "We didn't want to interfere with your new life," my father said diplomatically. "But when we saw you were being honored tonight, we felt it was appropriate to be here as family." Family. I repeated the word like it was a foreign concept. "You want to talk about family? Let's talk about how you cut me out of your lives based on lies. Let's talk about how you never asked for my side of the story. Let's talk about how you chose to believe the worst about me without a single piece of evidence." Evelyn's composure cracked slightly. "Nathan, we did what we thought was right at the time. Rebecca was so hurt, so convincing. You had to protect her," I interrupted. "Not me, her. The person who was lying to you? The person who was cheating on me and needed you to believe I was the villain so she could justify what she was doing." My father looked uncomfortable. "Son, if there were misunderstandings..." "There were no misunderstandings. There were lies. Deliberate, calculated lies designed to isolate me from my family so that Rebecca could run off with her boss without looking like the bad guy. And it worked perfectly because you were all so ready to believe I was capable of emotional abuse and infidelity." "We didn't know," Evelyn said weakly. "If you had told us..." "Told you what?" "I tried to tell you I had no idea what Rebecca was talking about. I begged you to explain what I had supposedly done. But you had already made up your minds. You chose her over me without evidence, without questions, without giving me any chance to defend myself." The journalist I had been speaking with was now watching our conversation with obvious interest, and I realized that our family drama was about to become very public if I didn't control the situation. But as I looked at Evelyn and my father standing there with their expressions of hurt innocence, as if they were the wronged parties in this scenario, something snapped inside me. "You know what?" I said, loud enough that several nearby conversations stopped. "Let's clear this up right now." I walked back to the journalist, my family trailing behind me with growing alarm. "I need to correct something," I told him. "My family did not support my entrepreneurial spirit or contribute to my success in any way. In fact, they completely cut contact with me 20 years ago based on false accusations from my ex-wife and never spoke to me again until tonight." The journalist's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a different story." "It's the true story. The people standing behind me abandoned me during the darkest period of my life, and are now attempting to claim credit for achievements they had nothing to do with. I built everything you see tonight after losing not just my marriage, but my entire family to lies and betrayal." Evelyn stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Nathan, please don't do this here." "Do what? Tell the truth?" I turned to face her fully. "You came here uninvited to take credit for my success. You spoke to a reporter about supporting my innovative thinking when you haven't spoken to me in 2 decades. You want to be part of my story? Then let's tell the whole story." By now we had attracted a small crowd of onlookers, including other journalists and several of my business colleagues. My parents looked mortified, clearly realizing that their plan to gracefully re-enter my life as proud family members was falling apart spectacularly. "The truth is," I continued, addressing the growing audience, "sometimes the most important thing that can happen to you is losing the people you thought you needed. Sometimes being abandoned forces you to discover strength you never knew you had. And sometimes the family that rejects you does you the greatest favor of your life." I turned back to my original conversation partner. "I'd be happy to give you the full interview about building success from nothing, about what it's like to achieve your dreams without a safety net, about learning that real family isn't about blood relations, but about the people who choose to stand by you when everything falls apart." The journalist was scribbling furiously. "This is a much more compelling story than I expected. Would you be willing to do a feature piece?" "Absolutely." I looked one more time at my family, who were now clustered together in obvious distress. "I think it's time people heard about what real resilience looks like." The Forbes article came out 3 weeks later with the headline "The Success Story That Started with Losing Everything." It detailed my entire history: the false accusations, the family abandonment, the 20 years of building a life and career from scratch. The story resonated with readers in ways I hadn't expected, generating thousands of comments from people who had experienced similar betrayals and found inspiration in my journey. But more than the professional validation, the article served as a final closing of the door on my old life. Several family members attempted to reach out after its publication, some with apologies, others with justifications for their behavior. I read their messages but didn't respond. Sarah was right. Healing didn't require reconciliation. It required letting go of the need for them to understand or acknowledge what they had done. The only contact I maintained was with my cousin Michael, who had been traveling abroad during the divorce and had missed the initial family drama. He reached out after reading the article to express his shock at what had happened, and his regret that he hadn't known to offer support at the time. His friendship became a bridge to the past that didn't require me to forgive or forget, just to acknowledge that not everyone in my bloodline had chosen betrayal. Rebecca, according to Michael, had divorced Marcus 3 years after leaving me when she discovered he was having an affair with another coworker. She was now living alone in a small apartment across town, working as a freelance marketing consultant and struggling financially. The poetic justice wasn't lost on me, but I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. Her choices had led me to a better life than I ever could have imagined with her. Today, as I write this story, I'm sitting in the home office of the house Sarah and I bought in the mountains outside Denver. Emma is 5 years old now, chattering away in the kitchen with her mother as they make dinner. Through my window, I can see the garden we planted together last spring. The fruit trees that will provide shade for Emma's children someday. The swing set where she plays every evening after Sarah comes home from the hospital. This is what family looks like. Not perfect, not dramatic, not bound by obligation or guilt. Just consistent, chosen love. People who know your worst stories and love you anyway. People who show up not because they share your DNA, but because they can't imagine being anywhere else. I used to think that losing my family was the worst thing that could happen to me. Now I understand it was the necessary clearing away of a foundation that was never strong enough to support the life I was meant to build. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find everything you actually needed. Evelyn still sends birthday cards every year, addressed to my old company. I don't open them, but I don't throw them away either. They sit in a box in my closet, evidence of her ongoing need to maintain the illusion that we have a relationship. I feel neither anger nor sadness when I see them arrive. They're just reminders of a story that ended long ago, with a character I used to play in a life I no longer remember very well. The real story began the day I stopped trying to prove my innocence to people who had already decided I was guilty. It began when I chose to build something new, rather than spending my energy trying to repair something that had been broken from the beginning. It began when I learned that the most powerful thing you can do when someone shows you who they really are, is to believe them the first time. I have learned that real family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who choose to spill theirs for you. It's the people who know all your mistakes and failures and broken places, and who show up anyway with their love intact. It's the people who celebrate your victories as if they were their own and hold your hand through your defeats without judgment or condition. And sometimes, the most profound act of love you can perform for yourself is walking away from people who insist on loving only the version of you that serves their needs. Sometimes the family you're born into is just practice for the family you're meant to create. As Emma calls my name from the kitchen, asking me to come see the picture she's drawn of our family, 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun, I close my laptop and head toward the sound of her laughter. This is home. This is family. This is the life that began the day I stopped fighting for the approval of people who had already made their choice about who I was. I wouldn't change a single day of the journey that brought me here.